Hey guys, welcome back to another Facebook Live broadcast. My name is Sarah King. I am the founder and owner of Invigorate Physical Therapy and Wellness here in Austin, Texas. And at Invigorate, I help people who have been diagnosed with Parkinson's create a personalized plan of attack so that you can redefine your diagnosis and get back to it in a life that you love, that's full of energy and vitality. And I have a really special guest here today. We are going to dive deep into a side that maybe you haven't explored with your Parkinson's journey. And it may get a little bit deep. It may get a little bit raw and uncomfortable. It may get a little emotional, and it may be the best thing that you've seen in a really long time. Ray Edwards is here, and the reason I brought him on is because I have a lot of people who reach out to me in private, and they're really struggling with not necessarily the exercise or the nutrition or, kind of the medication, all of the superficial things that come with Parkinson's. The people who are really struggling and who are the most quiet are the people who are wondering why they were diagnosed in the first place, why they developed Parkinson's, why me? Does my Parkinson's have a purpose? They're really grappling with their faith since they've been diagnosed. Faith in something greater, faith in life itself. And so today I'm talking with Ray Edwards, who is an internationally recognized communication strategist, copywriter, speaker, podcaster, author, all kinds of things, who was diagnosed in 2011. And I reached out to Ray after he published an episode on his podcast, which is a really popular podcast for those of us in the kind of business world, copywriting, marketing. And it was a very intimate conversation about being diagnosed with Parkinson's, what it feels like, and what things we hold back from the public about that diagnosis. So together, we're going to explore a lot of things. We're going to talk about his Parkinson's plan of attack. We're going to talk about his journey, and especially his faith and how he's called on it to ground him as he walks his Parkinson's journey. So I'm so glad you're here. I see a lot of people saying hi in the comment section below. Please keep it up. If you guys have questions as we go, put them there because we're going to answer them as we go. I see Paul and Vicky coming back, Bobby, Charlotte from Arizona is always here, Eduardo. Hey guys. So as you guys have questions, put them in the comments and we'll make sure that we get to them. But before we do that, I just want to say welcome, Ray. Thank you so much for coming. I know you're very deliberate with where you spend your time. And so it's a great honor to have you. And I'm really grateful that you are here.
Well, thank you. I'm very honored that you asked me to be here. I'm very happy to be here.
Wonderful. Well, maybe you could start with those of us who aren't familiar with you. I know I am because I tune into your business side, your podcast, and I listen to you for that reason, but a lot of our audience may not know who you are, what you do. Will you give us your background a little bit before we get started?
Sure. I've been in the communications business since I was 14 years old. I started out in broadcast radio, which is why I wear the goofy DJ headphones when I do this kind of thing. And I developed into being a communication strategist for a lot of top names in leadership and business. I've developed communications campaigns for people like Tony Robbins and Jack Canfield and Mark Victor Hansen and Michael Hyatt and many others that you've heard of and probably a lot more that you haven't. I help people develop their marketing campaigns. So I've helped sell over $300 million worth of products and services online. So I've had a pretty good run so far and I enjoy my work. I love what I do. So that's me in a nutshell. I mean, there's a lot more. I'm married 33 years to a beautiful woman named Lynn, and we have 2 pugs, which we adore them, and they run the household. And just like everybody else here right now, I've got a whole big, messy, beautiful, complicated life to deal with. It
is beautiful and messy, that is for sure. Well, maybe you could talk us through I'm sure this wasn't the first time that life got messy for you, but I'm sure that it was as disruptive as anything could be to a messy, beautiful life. So Can you talk us through your diagnosis journey and what that was like for you?
Yeah. I was at a conference in May of 2011. I was taking notes, and I noticed it just seemed like I couldn't make my hand keep up with my brain as I was writing. I felt like I was writing and felt like my arm was in maple syrup or something. And I thought, that is really strange. And then I looked back through my notes for the day. I noticed that my handwriting was getting smaller and smaller as the day went on. So I did what every good citizen of the 21st century does. As soon as I got back to my hotel room, I Googled it. And the first thing that came up was an article on Parkinson's disease. And I read the article, and then I read a bunch of articles linked, and I went to my family doctor when I got back and to Spokane, and I said, I think I have Parkinson's. And he said, come on, you're 45 years old. You're too young to have that. But just to make you feel better, I'll send you to a neurologist. So a few months later, the day before my 46th birthday, I went to the neurologist. I walked in her office. She observed me, talked to me for 5 minutes, and she said, you have Parkinson's disease. And thus began the ride. At first, I was kind of in shock. Literally, I didn't know what to feel. My wife was with me. We both had sort of the same reaction. We were like, well, what now? You're just going to let us leave? Like, don't we need some equipment or something? And we did. We just didn't know what it was. So when it began to really sink in, as you know, I read more of the prognosis. It's degenerative. It's progressive. It's incurable. And the doctor had told me many of those things. I heard some of them, and she gave me a timeline, which I can't believe that people still do that. But she said, well, within 7 years or so, you're going to not be able to take care of yourself. And so that began to sink in. And so I then did what many good 21st century Americans do. I went into denial, and we ran away and stayed in our RV in the woods for a while in Glacier National Park. And then I nosedived into total depression. I was like, I feel like my life is over. I'm 46 years old. I have this old person's disease. I'm not going to be able to take care of myself. And there was a point at which my wife and I had gone to a place in Redding, California, a church called Bethel Church in Redding, California. And we are believers in Jesus, and we believe that he still heals and that miracles still happen. And I'm not requiring anybody else to believe that. I'm just telling you this is our story. And I'd gone there seeking what I believed in, which was miraculous intervention by God on my behalf. And when that didn't happen, I went deeper into the rabbit hole. And finally, my wife sat me down and said, you need to remove your head from the rear part of your body. We need you back. We need you to lead your family. We need you to lead your business. We need you. There are people who are counting on you. So you can't indulge in this victim mentality anymore. And so I did what every good man would do. I listened to my wife immediately, did exactly what she said. And that's not exactly how it went.
Right.
I had to go through a period of being angry with her first and defensive because she was right. But then I realized that she was right. And I decided to take the bull by the horns. A friend of mine named Armin Morin said, well, I got lots of sympathetic responses from people when I told them about the diagnosis, but my friend Armin said, well, so you got it. What are you going to do with it? And that really hit home with me. I felt like, well, what am I going to do with it? So I decided I'm not going to accept the prognosis. I'm going to do everything I can to maintain my health and my movement, my independence, my ability to take care of myself. I'm going to do everything that I can. And what I can't do, there's no use in me getting upset about it because I can't do it. And so that's the journey I've been on since that day. And
I see a lot of similarities between your journey and a lot of the people watching. If you're watching and it resonates, give a thumbs up, a heart, a sad face, whatever, an angry face you want. But the shock, the denial, the trauma that comes with, I am also amazed with how many physicians or just healthcare practitioners or well-intentioned people, the power of the language that they use as soon as they are either delivering a diagnosis or hearing you express your diagnosis, the language that we use around it. Someone told you have 7 years. Most of the people that come to me were told 5. I don't know if there was some study in some journal somewhere that said, tell Parkinson's people that, they're in a wheelchair in 5 years. And it's not true, as you are well aware. So I think that a lot of people can appreciate that journey. And I know that you come from a very faithful background and do a lot of ministry work, and that's a big part of who you are. And I know a lot of people watching, they spread the gamut of religious beliefs, spiritual beliefs, as we all do. But maybe you can talk us through what it was like to have that conversation with the greater power or yourself about kind of your faith when you were diagnosed. What was that like, without leading you too far into that?
Well, I had done lots of praying for people and seeing lots of people miraculously healed of things like cancer and heart disease, and then small things like headaches and backaches. And I just seen enough to know that something was going on. And I have my beliefs about what's going on. I think it's Jesus. I think it's God. And I know other people have other opinions, and I don't argue with anybody, because I figure we'll all get the full explanation at some point. But I had seen those things happen. So I fully expected, Sarah, to experience that myself. And when I didn't, my first reaction was, I'm embarrassed to admit this, I got really angry with God. And I said, after all I've done for you, I can't say it without laughing, but that was my attitude. I was like, after all I've done for you, God, how could you let this happen to me? And then I began to question, have I believed the wrong thing? Did I misinterpret what I read? Did I misinterpret what happened? And I have arrived at a place, I can just tell you, it's been a rocky journey. And, I still have tough days mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, but they're much fewer and farther between than they were in the beginning. And I actually think I have more good days than most people who don't have this disease or any disease have. And it's partly because of Parkinson's. And now, I don't believe that God gave me Parkinson's or gave anybody else Parkinson's or cancer or lupus or fibromyalgia or any of those things to teach them a lesson or to develop their character. If we believe that God is the Father and that we're his children, that kind of behavior would be like me taking my little daughter out in the driveway and putting her legs out in the road and letting a car run over them and say, now see why you shouldn't run in the street? Because it's dangerous. I mean, it's abusive. So it's maybe kind of an extreme example, but I just don't believe God works that way. I believe we live in an imperfect world where people have choices that they make, and where things happen in nature that are not ideal. And so bad things happen, horrible things happen. And we often don't have control over them, but what we do have control over is how we respond. And so if you're a Christian, you probably heard the Bible verse, Romans 8:28, which says, God makes all things work out for the good of those who love him. And I believe that ultimately, this is just my belief, I believe that's everybody, ultimately. It may mean something different for you, but I believe that we all, deep in our hearts, love God, and he makes all things work out for our good. And at first, I was like, I cannot buy that. There's nothing good about this. And I began to notice I had friends that had passed away from horrible cancer. I mean, if you've ever known anybody who's been through a colorectal cancer and died of it, you know what a terrible event, long drawn out series of events that is, and how torturous it is. And so I just thought, how could anything good come from that? And I think that we have the choice to look for, how can I use this? What can I learn from this? How can this be of benefit to me, of benefit to others, of benefit to the world? How can it become part of my legacy? How can I ease someone else's suffering? There's so many things we can have happen out of this situation, Doesn't mean the disease is good. When I hear people say, well, Parkinson's was really a blessing, I want to smack them. It's not a blessing, but blessings can be derived from it as they can from most any situation. A book that was really helpful to me was Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. Yeah. And he wrote that book about being in a Nazi camp during World War II and the atrocious things that happened, and how the people who survived were people who had a sense of purpose and something that they were going to do because of and out of and through what they'd been through. So I believe that life doesn't happen to us. It happens for us. And our job and our task is to figure out, well, how did it happen for me? How does this help?
And that is a choice. I like the use of that word. It is a choice. It is not an easy one. And it may not feel like a choice. But it is a choice at the end of the day. And this may be a personal question, but considering nothing's off limits, were you already seeing a therapist before your diagnosis, or is that something that you? I had seen a therapist off and on for anxiety and depression, which is interesting because now I look back and I realize that there were signs of Parkinson's in my life and in my body when I was 19 years old. I acted out my dreams. I had sleep apnea. I remember being on a hike at age 21 and noticing that my right foot was dragging a little bit. And I had anxiety and depression. As many of us know who've done our homework, all those things are precursors, are signs ahead of time that you might be a candidate for Parkinson's. That might already be at work in your brain. So I had seen a therapist off and on for that. It had been many years, but once it set in that I had this and there was no getting away from it, and I think that may be the hardest part. You realize I can't escape this, especially when your symptoms become amplified. There's no way sometimes to stop thinking about it and to stop wishing for it to stop. And so I started seeing a therapist on a regular basis at that point because I needed somebody that I could talk to who would keep my confidence, who I could say anything to, and who would also be willing to say anything to me I needed to hear, whether I wanted to hear it or not. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of value. And one of the number one things that I always recommend people to be able to talk it through, because I think when you get in your mind and it's just settling in your mind and on repeat and you don't have some type of external, maybe more objective source of feedback, then it can spiral downward pretty quickly. Yeah. So when you had that moment of, your wife, it's Lynn, right?
Yeah, it's Lynn.
Lynn looked at you and said, "We need you back." And you said that now you've learned that living for a purpose is kind of what guides you. My question is, did you feel like you lose your purpose? You lost your purpose and got it back, or you were just more clarified in why you're moving forward at that moment?
I feel that I got more clarity on what my purpose really is. It's not that it changed, but a lot of the stuff that distracts us from acknowledging what our purpose is was stripped away. Like, we all intellectually know that we're going to age, that our bodies are going to decay and decline, and that we're going to die. We all intellectually know that. But there's a difference between knowing it here and knowing it here. And so suddenly, I got it here. And it was so real to me that for a while, all I could think about was, this is going to define my reality. And eventually I reached a place where I decided, and again, it is a decision. And that, when I heard people say that made me angry. People would say, well, you should choose joy. And I'm like, you try this for a while and tell me how to choose joy. But it turns out you can, and you must. If you want to survive and have a great quality of life, then I feel like I had to make the choice to move forward. And because all the distractions now, the things that didn't matter, like I no longer had to worry about trying to look like I was 26 years old anymore. I no longer had to worry about or think about the pressure that was on me to perform at certain economic levels or certain career achievements between now and the time I'm 55 and 65 and figuring out the value of my investment accounts. All these things have their importance. They have their place. But I think we get our priorities so mixed up that for the one thing we're avoiding, this is just my opinion, but I think the big issue on the table that we all try to avoid all of our lives is our mortality, is the fact that this whole ride comes to an end. And I think that most of what we do, and again, this is my opinion, I don't put this on anybody, maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's just me, but most of what I was doing was avoiding thinking about that, because that brings reality into stark focus. And you realize, okay, I got to get serious about what's important. I've got promises I've made. I've got people I need to take care of. I've got people that need to hear from me, who need to be encouraged by me, who need to be helped by me. And I need to stop focusing on myself. And this was key for me. I'm about 15 minutes away from depression at any given moment. All I have to do is start thinking about me and start thinking about, well, what if? What if tomorrow I get racked with dystonia and I can't walk? What if I'm in public and that happens? What if I completely lose my voice because I have some voice challenges because of the Parkinson's? What if if I'm having speaking difficulties, as I do from time to time, what if people think I'm drunk? What do they say? What if people make fun of me? As ridiculous as that sounds, it's something that crosses my mind. I think, well, those kids are laughing. They're probably laughing at me right now. So I had to push all that aside and realize it's meaningless. None of that lasts. None of that matters. What does matter? What matters is that we are loving, that we are loved. And then I learned to realize that to feel loved doesn't depend on other people. If you want to feel loved, you just have to be loving toward people. So I focus on those things and doing what I feel God has called me to do, which he gave us a commandment when he left the earth, Jesus, and he said, here's my commandment. Love one another. Pretty simple, not always easy, but pretty simple.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I think that that's very poignant because I think a lot of people turn that inward. And this is with a Parkinson's diagnosis or life struggles. It's not just Parkinson's, yep. Obviously, but the what ifs and the fears that take hold. And I love that, flipping the mirror and instead focusing on how you can help, how you can love, how you can bring joy to the people around you, how you can take advantage of your minutes. And I know that I don't have a Parkinson's diagnosis. And so it can be hard to hear that coming from a therapist or a healthcare provider that's trying to look at you and help you. And then also in contrast, coming from someone who's lived through it. And that's why I really enjoy these interviews, is because I want to give people more role models. And I know you look up to Michael J. Fox, and I think a lot of people on this broadcast do too. And so I just want to say thank you for being that example for people. And so I think what I would love to know is, why did you decide to tell the world? You have a blog post that Lauren will share in the comments, or it'll be around this video somewhere, depending on when you're watching it. But a blog post titled "The Time Has Come," which was kind of your coming out post about Parkinson's. You had kept it a secret because of reasons I'm sure you'll share, yeah. And then decided that it was time to talk about it. So what happened around that time?
I had reached a point where I was becoming more successful than I'd ever been in my business. I was becoming known in the marketing and business world as somebody who was the go-to guy for marketing copy and campaigns and for product launches online. And I'd written a book that had become a bestseller, and I did a lot of speaking, and I had a podcast, and I did a lot of video, and I wanted to keep it secret because I felt like at that time I did not have my values clear at that time. And so at that time I thought, well, if I start looking weird, then people will no longer pay attention to me. They'll write me off. They'll say he's a has-been, he's sick, he's not going to be around, so let's move on to somebody else. So it was a very materialistic and egocentric, prideful, vanity sort of thing. But I reached a point where people started asking me, "Are you okay? You don't seem right." And I realized, well, if these few people are saying this, a lot more people are noticing it and not saying it. And then I started to think about what had encouraged me. And what had been encouraging to me was people who shared their journey and talked about the hard stuff. And I felt like, yeah, that's exactly how I feel. I have those same kind of mornings sometimes. I have those same kind of feelings sometimes. Sometimes I feel isolated from everybody, like I'm on an island by myself. And then people ask me, why are you so remote? Why don't you talk? And then that makes me withdraw even more. And I heard people tell these stories and I thought, I need to share, because that's the way I can most help people with this diagnosis. And I had actually avoided being around people with Parkinson's because so many of us give up. They just decide, or we just decide, I'm done. I'm not going to go out anymore. I'm not going to try to do anything. I mean, like, I stopped driving for a while right after I got my diagnosis, which is ridiculous because I still drive to this day, but I felt like, I can't drive anymore. I have Parkinson's. Well, that was dumb. And it was my wife who said, here, take the keys, drive, shut up. And
she's a great woman. I like her.
She is. I like her a lot too. So I've lost track of what the question was.
I was just asking about why you decided to come out with your blog post. Mm-hmm.
Yes. I get off and tell my stories, and sometimes I rabbit trail.
Okay. I like them.
I just knew I had to, if I wanted to remain in the public eye, I had to explain what was going on with me. And it would be encouraging to other people. And I also felt like it was a matter of faith, because I had come to some conclusions about my questions, because I had lots of questions like, God, why wasn't I healed? Why did this happen to me? Which, let me just tell you right now, that's a fruitless question. If I were you, my advice, Parkinson's patient to Parkinson's patient, my advice to you is just give that up. Just let go of that, because you'll never get an answer that'll make you happy. That's my opinion. You can try it and let me know how that works out for you, because it didn't work too well for me. But when I let go of it, I felt a lot of peace. There's a passage in the Bible that says he gives us the peace that passes understanding. And what I figured out was sometimes to have the peace, you have to give up the need to understand. And that was a great relief. I don't have to know why. I just have to know this is how it is. And now what? And so I felt like I had some spiritual things that I could share with people in my faith community, because lots of other people had been through similar things. I had prayed for people who had cancer and they didn't get healed. And I had all these pat explanations I would give them. I would say, well, it's God's timing, not our timing. And God sees everything. We don't see everything. And if we knew the reasons, then we would probably make the same decision he did. Or I had all kinds of formulaic answers that were actually true. I think theologically they're sound. Philosophically, they're reasonable. But when you're the person in the targets, in the crosshairs of this disease, you don't want to hear that stuff. It doesn't help you. And so now I have great empathy for people who are not healed, or people who don't recover, or people who get treated for cancer and who their chemo doesn't help them. It just hurts them and they get worse, or they have a treatment for some other disease or problem, or it goes beyond the illnesses. It goes into tragic relationship situations. And people say, well, why did this happen to me? And why was I not able to recover from it? We need to let one another know that we need to recognize that everybody carries some problem, some wound, that we're all the walking wounded, if you will. And we need to treat each other more gently. And so for all those reasons, and for the reason that I was also fired up about not accepting this and not letting other people go down without a fight, that I wanted to pick up that flag and run with it and say, here, let me show you a better way. And part of that was selfish, because I knew if I put myself in that position, I would be forced to follow what I said was a better way, because now I had put leverage on myself. Like, I have to live up to what I said publicly. So, and sometimes I do a pretty good job of that.
Nobody's perfect. You do a great job. That's really powerful. And I'm curious what the response was after the first blog post, which I think was in 2013. And then I know you've done another podcast recently, obviously, about your Parkinson's and challenges with it. So for the people who are still keeping it a secret, still keeping it under wraps, maybe you could talk about what the response was from your community, what surprised you, how you felt about it, how that went.
I had a few categories of responses. They fell into just a few descriptions. One was lots of sympathy, oh, Ray, I'm so sorry. So tragic. And I mean, some of that was nice, but some of it was just overboard. It was like, I'm not dead yet. Like the scene from Monty Python. I'm not dead yet. I'm actually feeling quite better.
Quite better.
So I got some of that, but that always comes from a place of somebody's heart that they're reaching out to you, really saying, I love you. I'm sorry that you're going through this. And so I accepted all that, even the stuff that I felt was misguided, as an expression of love. And then I experienced there were some people who said, well, you deserve this. You ate the wrong thing. You drank poison sodas. They had all these theories about how I had brought this on myself. Unbelievably, some of my spiritual friends said, well, there must be some hidden sin in your life that God is taking a price out of you because you've done something that we don't know about. I'm like, really?
Wow.
That's where you want to go with this? And then I had the nutcases, the people who wanted to show me how to fold a special tinfoil hat to solve my problem, or I should say well-intentioned people who are trying to help with crazy ideas. With unconventional ideas. Let me try to be kind. But, they all had some magic formula I needed to drink or eat or some device I needed to buy. And I actually, when I get these messages, I do investigate each one of them, unless I've already investigated it to see, because maybe they're right. Maybe there's something here. I mean, remember the story of Udo's oil. And there are other cases in medical history where a layperson discovered a cure or a symptomatic remedy for a big disease that the medical community could not. So I never write that off, but I usually, so far, I've been disappointed. None of them have been the miracle cure that they claim to be. So I got some of that. And then I got some people who just told me I shouldn't talk about this publicly. It was uncomfortable and it wasn't part of my profession. It wasn't part of my business. So I got a mixture. But overwhelmingly, let me be clear. Overwhelmingly, the response was positive. It was, I get messages continually from people who have Parkinson's or who have MS or some similar disorder, who say that was very encouraging to me. It is very encouraging to me, from their loved ones who say the same thing, or from people who don't have any kind of disease, but feel like maybe they were depressed and down and they felt like it somehow helped lift their spirits. And that is the thing that I focus on, the thing I'm most grateful for, and why I keep talking about it now, because there was a point at which I said, I don't want to be a spokesperson for a disease. That's not how I want to be defined. So I'm not defined by that. I'm a spokesperson for life. Let's keep on living, because none of us are going to get out of this thing alive. We're all going to get got by something. The question is not, are we going to die? The question is, what are we going to do with the days that we're living? That's the question.
We should just sign off after that. I got totally lost in everything that you're saying. So I think my question that I wanted to ask, which pertains to people who are surrounding the Parkinson's community, healthcare providers, family, friends, the people that surround you on a day-to-day basis, how would you, and maybe you can speak for the community at large to some degree, but what would be the most helpful, soul supportive way for someone to support you? Maybe if you just tell them you've been diagnosed, for example, what's been maybe the best response you've gotten, or do you have any suggestions for how to be on the other side to support you and kind of be that person to support you?
Yeah, I've had several people who I feel responded beautifully, and that response almost always looks the same way. It's a recognition that something significant has happened for me, and that it has a life-altering effect on the rest of my days, and kind of watching me to see where I am. And even one person who asked, well, do you want to talk about how you feel about this? Or do you just want me to let you know that I'm here for you? And at that time, that's what I wanted. I just wanted them to know what had happened and that they were here for me. And so that's what they did. And they treated me like a normal person. And that's what I would say. It's still the same person. I'm still the same person. So you don't have to treat me with kid gloves. Ask me if I want help. That's one thing. Sometimes I'm fumbling with things, with my keys or with trying to get something out of a food dish, trying to scoop out and serve myself some dinner. And sometimes I want to be left alone to accomplish it on my own because I'm stubborn and maybe I'm a little miffed about the whole thing. I'm determined I'm going to do this myself. I'm going to tie my own shoes. I'm going to tie my own tie. And then other times I feel like, can't you see? I need some help. So while I would say to people on the outside, ask if people want help, I would say to those of us who have Parkinson's, be clear. Let people know in your life, hey, unless I ask for help, let me try to do it myself. And then other times I may ask for your help. And so it took me a long time, Sarah, to ask. I would take 30 minutes to button my shirt up in the morning rather than ask somebody. And now I just walk into the room where my wife is. I say, hey, could you button me up? Could you roll up my sleeves for me? And 30 seconds later, I'm done. And I realized, well, that was stupid. I took 30 minutes to do that just because of pride. So sometimes people will ask me how I'm doing, and I'll say, well, I'll say something like, it's been kind of tough the last couple of days, and they'll gloss right over it and move on. And if I tell you it's been kind of tough or I'm having a hard time, that means I'm willing to talk. So maybe you should listen. And I'm speaking more for other people than for I mostly can deal with it, whatever happens now. But there were times I just felt completely shut out by people. So you just treat people with Parkinson's the way you'd want to be treated. Let them know you see them. Let them know you see that they have a difficulty. Let them know that you want to help, but help them in the way they want to be helped. And then sometimes I think we as Parkinson's patients need to understand that we're holding things up for other people and we should be more considerate. There's a scene in the Michael J. Fox TV show that lasted for just a short season. There's a scene where they're having, I think it was Thanksgiving dinner, and Michael's trying to dish out some potatoes or something from a plate, and his arm's shaking, and everybody's watching and waiting and watching and waiting. And finally his wife reaches over, grabs a spoon and says, "Okay, you can have a personal victory later. We need to eat." And I thought that was the funniest thing. And so being able to laugh about it is important for me as a patient, and it's important for me that people around me can laugh about it also. So I don't know if any of that's helpful, but that's just a mishmash of ideas that I had to share.
I think that's perfect and very well said. So now you are you're very open about your diagnosis. You have no qualms, obviously, talking about it, coming on here, for example, and your blogs and your podcast. So now, what does your day-to-day look like? What is, we talk a lot at Invigorate about your Parkinson's plan of attack, how you go about taking control of your daily decisions to help you maximize your energy and vitality and all those good things. So can you share with us exactly what is part of your plan of attack? And
yes.
Yeah, how that is now?
Yeah, I can share what my plan is, and then I'll share how it sometimes doesn't work out. But I think it's important to have a plan, to have a proactive set of actions you're going to take charge of your life and not let the disease take charge of your life. So the things that, according to everything that I've read and been able to find out, I have a great neurologist now, Dr. David Greeley, who is very open to talking about new and alternative therapies and ideas. And I mean, he's very clear about, that hasn't really been tested, Ray, so you shouldn't do that. But he's willing to talk to me about it. And sometimes his answer is, well, you should try that, see if it works for you. So the things that I've discovered that do work for me, first of all, I take medication. So one of the challenges I think we have as Parkinson's patients, sometimes if our medication is working for us, people think we're fine. They're like, what's the big deal? You seem fine to me. And, any Parkinson's patient who takes medication is laughing inside saying, well, you got no idea, pal. I could tell you what fine is about, and it's not about this. But it is a challenge to look fine, although I'm happy to look fine. So I take medication, and that was a struggle for me at first. I resisted it, and finally my neurologist said, look, Ray, I know I'm a neurologist and I'm going to push pills because that's what we do. But you should try this because I think it'll make your life better. And somehow that was the magic phrase I needed to hear. I think it'll make your life better. So I did try it, and it did make my life better. And it also made my life more challenging in some ways, as anybody who takes L-Dopa therapy knows. So I take the medication. I currently am eating a ketogenic diet because there's no definitive proof. I want to be clear that I understand that because I read all the medical studies that I can get my hands on, and I know how to pick the good ones from the bad ones. There's a book called Bad Science you should check out if you're into this kind of stuff. It'll help you weed out the good science from the bad science. There's lots of bad science that's designed to sell miracle supplements and junk like that, so you got to be careful about what you accept and why. But there's a lot of evidence that seems to show that consuming a high-fat, healthy fats, a high-fat, moderate protein, super low carbohydrate diet causes your body to burn fat for fuel instead of glucose. And that's better for your brain. It's better for brain health. That it has perhaps some neuroprotective qualities and properties. And so it just seems to have a lot of evidence to say that it will, if not reverse damage done by the disease, at least slow it down, maybe even stop it. Maybe. I realize that it's just a maybe right now, but it seems to be the best maybe I've got. And after having tried the ketogenic diet for a while, I've discovered I have more energy. And anybody who has Parkinson's knows one of the challenges we have is fatigue and depletion of our energy. So it's been helpful to me in that way. It may not be for everybody. It's hard to follow. It's like the hardest diet you'll ever undertake, is what people told me. I have since learned to change that belief. And I've decided to start telling people it's the easiest diet to follow because it's very simple. There's so much you can't eat. There's only a few things you can. So it's not hard to keep track of what you can eat. Because I think telling ourselves it's the hardest diet to follow, just self-fulfilling prophecy. It makes it more difficult. So I eat a ketogenic diet. I get vigorous exercise for about 1 hour, at least 6 days a week. Part of my routine is cycling on a stationary bike because there's a lot of evidence that shows that those large, circular, steady, rhythmic motions with your large leg muscles at 90 RPMs or better for 45 minutes a day definitely has symptomatic relieving properties. I know that for a fact. I see it in my own life. And in fact, my son can see me today and see me 3 days from now, and he can tell me whether or not I've been on the bike. He can say, oh, you haven't been to the gym and been on your bike because I can see the jerkiness in your movements and you're not moving smoothly, so you should go exercise, Dad. So exercise is a big part of it. Keeping myself out of the introspection, the inner thinking about why and what happens and what it's going to look like 10 years from now. And look, none of us know the answer to that question, whether we have Parkinson's or not. And I've just discovered that introspection, these little introspection festivals that I have sometimes, they never end with me feeling better. So I try not to have them anymore, best I can. And then I meditate, I pray, I engage in my spiritual practices, I connect with God, whatever that means for you. I think that's an important and meaningful thing to pursue. And I try to be around positive people and only let positive things into my head. I don't watch horror movies anymore because I got enough of that in my own life. I don't need to have some imaginary horror made up to scare me even more. I try to watch positive movies, positive TV shows, read positive books. And some people say, well, that's not realistic. Well, no. But there are studies that demonstrate that pessimists have a more accurate view of life, but optimists, while their view of life is less accurate, they're happier and they live longer. Hello, I'll take optimism. It's not a hard choice. One thing I have to do is I've had to force myself to rest more often. The biggest challenge I have is getting enough sleep. As you know, with this disease comes difficulties in sleeping for a lot of people. And so I've never been a big sleeper, but now it's, if I don't take extraordinary measures, I'll probably only sleep 4 hours a night. So I have to exercise at a certain time. I have to take a hot shower at a certain time to let my body start cooling down. I have to have a good sleep hygiene routine where the windows are blacked out. There's no lights in the room. I've got an eye mask on. I've got white noise playing. The bedroom is not cluttered. I don't sleep with my dogs. Everything you can think of that you read in any book about getting good sleep, I do it. And still I can get maybe 6 hours of sleep, but that's so much better than 4. Trust me. And I can see it. The more I sleep, the better I feel. And so that's my routine. And I believe that has helped tremendously because a lot of people will tell me if they meet me at the right time of day, and you Parkinson's folks know what I'm talking about. Meet me at the right time of day, they'll say, I couldn't even tell you had that disease. And I often think, yeah, just wait. You should hang around me about 7:30 tonight. Then you'll know. And then the reality is sometimes I don't stick with the ketogenic diet. Sometimes I just have to have a donut. And I got over condemning myself for that and just realized, okay, when that happens, there's a saying, simply resume. I simply resume my eating plan after I've fallen off the wagon. And speaking of falling off the wagon, there's a lot of good wisdom in the recovery movement. I tell people that I'm recovering from Parkinson's disease, and I get quizzical looks and sometimes skepticism and sometimes just outright hostility about that. But I believe it's a lot like recovering from an addiction, because the addiction we get is the addiction to self-pity and victim thinking. And that will kill you faster than any disease. So I refuse to see myself as a victim. I choose to live as a victor. And so I found a lot of wisdom in the recovery movement. And one of the things you ask about people keeping it a secret and trying to decide whether or not to go public with it, there's a saying in the recovery movement that you're only as sick as your secrets. Yeah. Meaning that is what torpedoes you and puts your heart under a shadow, is having a secret you don't want people to discover. Once you reveal your secrets, there's nothing for people to find out. So you're not worried about people finding out. So anyway, back to you're talking about my plan of attack. That's my plan of attack. It works pretty well. But, Sarah, there are days that I wake up and the symptoms are way out of control. And I just, I don't feel like facing anybody. I don't feel like doing anything. I just want to crawl back under the covers and have a pity party. And sometimes I do that. I never celebrate it afterwards. I never say, that was a good idea. I should do that more often. But sometimes, it happens. So again, you just simply resume as soon as you get your wits back about you and you keep on moving. It's kind of like the Dory philosophy of dealing with Parkinson's. Keep on swimming. Just keep on swimming. Keep on swimming.
Yeah. You could sing that. And I like your simply resume. That is easy to remember. Simply resume and without judgment, right? Because none of us are perfect. None of us are sticking to our plan 100% of the time. And the more you beat yourself up about kind of straying and having that donut, the more you're actually going to stress your body instead of just being gracious with yourself, I guess, and simply resume. I love that. So let's make a note of that. And I saw a question pop in here. Let me scroll down and find it.
Everyone is poured in.
We have lots of people watching. It looks like Marlene's in here, Philip, Devin. Everybody's loving this. Roger says everything is spot on. And I saw a comment about exercise. Let me put this one up here. So Vicky asks, let me take this down. Vicky asks, Ray, have you exercised or gone to PT since you were first diagnosed? So I know you said exercise, you do your cycling. Have you, not to put you on the spot and no judgment at all about physical therapy, but have you gone to see a physical therapist?
Yes, I have. And so I have a couple things I'll go into a little bit of detail. I hired a trainer because I found that I'm only willing to exercise so far and so hard by myself. I need somebody there to push me, to say, oh, you can do it. Come on. And to stop me from having the excuse, well, I might drop the weight because I might be shaky. And so now I've got somebody there to catch the weight if I drop it. So I don't have an excuse not to lift it. So I have that going on for me. Physical trainer, a fitness trainer I meet with 3 times a week. And then I exercise on my own the other days. I went to see a couple different physical therapists, and I did the, what's the big movement thing called? I even forget the name of it now.
The big and loud, LSVT.
Yeah, exactly. I did that training, which was very helpful. And currently, this is something I forgot to mention. This is the trifecta for me. The 3 things that help me the most are the medication. Sorry, anti-medication people. That's just how it is. The medication, nothing works as good as that stuff. The medication is number 1. Number 2 is diet and exercise. And number 3 is deep tissue massage. It doesn't work for everybody, but my God, it's like a miracle for me. I have quite a bit of dystonia going on. And so I'd never had a massage up until my 46th birthday. I thought it was weird. I didn't want strangers touching me. I thought people who went to massage places they're up to something shady. I'm embarrassed by that now, but that's what I thought. And finally, my neurologist said, maybe you should try this. This seems to work for a lot of people. So I went to a massage establishment here locally, therapeutic massage, and I had my first one, and I was like, oh my God, what has been wrong with me all my life? I should have been doing this a long time ago. So now it's kind of crazy because I get at least 3 massages a week. I realize not everybody can manage to do that, but I started out going once a month, which was the plan they sold at the massage establishment. And then I started going once a week, and they were like, that's a lot. Are you sure you want to do that? And then I started going 3 times a week. And if I'm like doing a live event, I do seminars, I do speaking. Like I did speaking over the weekend. I spoke for 2 days in a row. And when I'm doing that kind of thing, I get a massage every night after the long day because I get kinked up. My body gets tight. The dystonia begins to distort the way I hold my frame. And that causes pain and imbalance and all kinds of problems. So that's been a huge benefit for me. So if you haven't tried deep tissue massage therapy, I encourage you to give that a try. And I know it's difficult to have somebody touching you. You feel vulnerable. You feel exposed, especially when they can see your symptoms so clearly. I found that the thing to do if I have a new therapist, I just tell them, look, I have this shake, I have this tremor, I have these spasms, and it makes me really uncomfortable. I'm kind of embarrassed about it. And they always are like, don't even let that worry you. It's not a problem. I'm here to help you. Once you get that off your chest, you can relax and you can enjoy the benefits. And it's proven that one of the reasons that massage therapy helps is it releases that magic substance that your body makes called dopamine. That
magic substance. We love it and want more of it and preserve it at all costs.
Yes.
So this has been so wonderful. I didn't see any other there were some questions that have to do with general Parkinson's. I saw one about antidepressants. I do want to acknowledge that one. But it seems like that's a conversation for a different day. We do have one come in here. Let me switch this one here.
I just want to say something about the antidepressant thing.
Sure.
If I may.
Absolutely.
I have all my life been I've told you I've dealt with anxiety and depression. And for the longest time, I thought it was something that I thought my way out of. Like I went through cognitive behavioral therapy, and I was a big fan, and still I'm a big fan of Tony Robbins, who, pretty much says there is no such thing as depression. Well, he doesn't say there's no such thing. He says very rarely do people need the medication. That relates to the way we think. I think he may be right in a lot of cases, but for Parkinson's patients especially, you got to own the truth. It is part of the disease, potentially. So don't be resistant. If you've tried the exercise routine, you've tried the cognitive behavioral therapy, you've tried talking it through, try all those things first. And if that doesn't work, then don't hesitate. Just like you don't hesitate to take medication for your tremor and your bradykinesia and the different things that you deal with, don't hesitate to take medicine for the depression, because sometimes you just can't laugh your way out of it. It's just how it is.
Yeah. And everyone suffers from it, even the people who have such great attitudes on life. I think of Robin Williams, can't find someone, seemed like from the outside, happier and more willing to find a laugh and a smile. And he struggled, unfortunately. So I love that feedback. Thank you for sharing. We do have one from Amatola. I don't know if you are familiar with Amatola. She was a guest on one of my broadcasts earlier, but she's also diagnosed with Parkinson's, and she's wondering, do you have cognitive difficulty, and did that affect your ability to pray coherently?
I wouldn't say I have cognitive difficulty. I have noticed some cognitive decline mainly in the area of memory. But I don't know if that's because of the Parkinson's or because I'm 52 years old. I've been tested. I went and had the baseline test done a few years ago, and I've been back and revisited and had a test, and I've been told that the decline that has happened is within the normal parameters that they see with people my age. I'm not sure we should accept that, but that's what they told me. So I didn't become too alarmed by it. So that didn't affect my ability to pray or to think about things. One thing that you may have noticed some of it during this interview is sometimes my thoughts get ahead of my ability to speak them out of my lips. And that is sometimes embarrassing, and I have to slow down and be more deliberate, intentional. I have to speak loudly and with intent. Some of you get that. So that's been an adjustment for me. But overall, we run into these limitations that are placed upon us against our will by this disease. Whether they're cognitive or physical or emotional or spiritual, we have a choice about how to respond to that. Either we respond by giving up and giving in, or we respond by pressing forward and doing what we can. I just recommend press forward and do what you can.
Beautiful. I think that is a great place to end it. Unless you have anything else to share, any other thoughts that you have for anyone in the Parkinson's community, or just kind of in the same boat as you've been in. Do you have anything that you want to add?
I don't think I have anything to add to what I've already said, other than find somebody you can be totally open with and talk about your feelings, which, listen, I get it. All my life, I hated that kind of stuff. I was like, we shouldn't have to talk about our feelings. That's talk about my feelings. You need somebody you can express the feelings. You need somebody you can say the dark things to. And it's probably not your husband or your wife. They probably don't need to hear that. I mean, not that you keep secrets from them, but they've got enough worries about your health and your condition. And you need somebody you can open up totally and say exactly what you're thinking, and have them call you out on stuff that's wrong or that's not healthy. It's probably a better way to put it. And so you can unload that stuff, and you don't unwittingly end up unloading it on people who don't deserve it because you bottled it up and kept it inside. Because if you keep those emotions bottled up, they will come out. They'll come out physically. They'll come out in relationships. They'll come out in your work. Better to have a control on that valve. And that sounds a lot like a therapist to me. So I really recommend strongly that you consider that if you haven't done so already.
I second that for sure. Someone that you can talk to in person, look them in the eye, and connect as a human being is really valuable. So,
Yep.
Well, Gray, thank you so much for joining me. If you guys want to learn more about Ray, his website is rayedwards.com. Lauren is going to go ahead and list all of the blog posts that he's written about his experience and his Parkinson's journey in the comments below, or if you're watching this on replay, it's somewhere around this video. And I hope that it was a valuable conversation for you. I would love to hear what you think. You can comment below and let us know what came up for you. Make sure that you like or love. And most importantly, if it's not sharing this interview with someone, then having a conversation with someone that you love, that's important to you, with your Parkinson's support group, with someone about any of these challenges that you're facing, because you don't have to face them alone. And that is what we're here to do as human beings. We're here to love, as Ray would say, and to share in our life experiences, no matter what that is. So I hope that you can find some peace. And until next time, keep moving, and just sending you all lots and lots of big hugs. All right. Bye.